Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be talking all about how to become a study ninja.
Yeah.
You guys shared some really great resources with us.
Yeah.
2 guides on effective study techniques and a handbook from the University of Otago in New Zealand.
Awesome.
So let's just jump right in. I'm really excited about this.
Me too.
So what kind of jumps out at you as you look at this material?
You know, I think what's really cool about all 3 of these sources is that they all really emphasize the idea that there's no one right way to study.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
And I really like that approach because it's not like a cookie cutter, everybody has to do it this way. It's
Right.
like they're giving you a toolbox full of techniques and you get to choose what works best for your learning style.
Oh, I love that, a toolbox.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's open up this toolbox and peek inside. What is one of the techniques that really stood out to you?
Well, I think one that's really popular and that a lot of people have success with is the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of that one?
I have.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of timers, so.
Yeah, it's really about working in these focused bursts. So you set a timer, like for 25 minutes, you work with intense focus.
Okay.
And then you take a short break, like 5 minutes, and you just repeat that cycle a few times.
Okay.
And then you take a longer break. And the beauty of it is that you can kind of adjust it to your own needs and focus levels.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Some people might need shorter intervals.
Right.
Like 20 minutes, and other people can go a little bit longer.
Yeah, I actually find that I need to adjust it depending on what I'm working on.
Absolutely.
Like if it's something I'm really
Yeah.
interested in, I can go longer.
Right.
If it's something where I'm like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
I need that timer to be shorter.
Exactly. So it's all about figuring out what works best for you.
Okay.
But the key is that focus time. You're really eliminating distractions
Right.
and just giving it your all for that short burst.
So I am a big fan of timers, so that one I've used quite a bit.
Yeah.
But what about when you're really struggling to grasp a concept?
Okay.
Have you ever had that where you're like,
Oh, yeah, all the time.
I just don't get it?
Especially when you're learning something new.
Right.
That can be really challenging.
So is there a technique that can kind of help with that?
Well, one that I think is really cool and very effective is the Feynman technique.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
I have, but I always kind of dismissed it as a little bit gimmicky.
Really?
Yeah, I never really tried it.
Well, I think you should give it a shot
Okay.
because it's all about testing your understanding by pretending to teach the concept to someone who has no prior knowledge.
Okay.
So, imagine you're explaining it to a 12-year-old.
Okay.
Can you break it down in simple, clear terms that they would understand?
Right.
If not, it might indicate that there's a gap in your own understanding.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense than I thought it did.
Yeah. It's really about forcing you to confront your own knowledge gaps and to really simplify things.
Okay, so I'm adding that to my toolbox.
I think you'll be surprised how effective it can be.
Right.
So let's move on to a technique that's specifically designed to boost reading comprehension.
Okay.
The SQ3R method.
I've heard of that acronym,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I've ever actually looked into it.
Okay, well, let's break it down.
Okay.
It stands for survey, question, read, recite, and review.
Okay.
And it's a structured approach that helps you engage with a text on a much deeper level.
Okay.
So the first step is survey. So you're skimming through the material,
Okay.
looking at headings, subheadings, visuals.
So you're getting a lay of the land.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the next step is question. So you're formulating questions based on what you've surveyed.
Okay.
What do you want to learn from this text? What are the key takeaways that you're hoping to glean?
Right.
And this questioning stage is really crucial because it sets an intention for your reading. Oh, that's a good point.
And it turns you from a passive recipient of information into an active seeker.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've surveyed the land. I've asked my questions.
Then you read.
Now I read.
Now you dive in.
Okay.
And you're really focusing on absorbing the information.
Yeah.
Looking for the answers to those questions that you posed.
Okay.
And then after you finish reading, it's time to recite.
Oh, okay.
So you're summarizing the key points in your own words, explaining concepts out loud, maybe even teaching it to an imaginary student.
Ooh, Feynman technique.
There you go.
I see how this is all connecting.
Yes. And then the final step is review.
Okay.
So you're going back over the material, making sure you understand the main points
Okay.
and filling in any gaps in your notes.
So it's really a way to kind of solidify what you just read.
Exactly.
All right, so SQ3R. Got it.
Yeah.
Check. Okay, what about when you have to memorize a ton of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Like facts and figures and dates.
Rote memorization. Yeah. Do you have any tricks up your sleeve for that?
Well, one that can be really helpful is mnemonics.
Okay.
Have you ever used mnemonics?
I feel like I have,
Yeah.
like way back in the day.
They're memory aids
Okay.
that use patterns and associations
Oh, wait.
to help you remember information. So
Yeah.
think like acronyms, rhymes, or even silly sentences that link seemingly random pieces of information together.
Like every good boy does fine
Exactly.
for the lines on the...
Yeah, the musical staff.
Yes.
Exactly. Or how about my very educated mother just served us noodles to remember the order of the planets
Oh, yeah, yeah.
from the sun.
I do remember those.
Yeah, and the sillier and more memorable, the better,
That's true.
because it's going to stick in your brain.
Okay, so mnemonics.
Sure.
What about quizzing yourself?
Oh, that's a great one.
I love flashcards.
Flashcards are fantastic for that, and that really taps into the power of retrieval practice,
Okay.
which is basically the act of actively recalling information without looking at your notes.
Oh.
And the more you practice retrieving information, the stronger those neural connections become in your brain.
So it's like a workout for your brain.
Exactly.
Okay.
And speaking of workouts, the retrieval practice itself is a really great study technique.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so basically what you do is you close your book after you've been studying something,
Okay.
and you try to recall everything you can from memory.
Okay.
And then you go back and check for accuracy, and you focus on any areas where you struggled.
So it's almost like you're taking a test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can be really beneficial for building your confidence and also reducing test anxiety,
And that's a good point.
because you're kind of simulating that test situation.
Right, right.
Yeah. And one thing that I find really interesting about all of these techniques is this emphasis on active learning.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about passively absorbing information.
Right.
It's about interacting with the material, manipulating it, making it your own.
You're a participant.
Exactly.
Not just a spectator.
Precisely.
Okay.
So now let's shift gears a bit and talk about creating the optimal study environment.
Okay.
Because, you know, even with the best study techniques, if you're surrounded by distractions,
It's not going to work.
it's going to be really tough to focus.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's delve into how to create a study space that promotes focus and productivity.
All right, let's do it.
Okay?
All right, so we're ready to transform our study spaces
Yes,
into these productivity powerhouses.
exactly.
Where do we even begin?
Well, first things first, comfort.
Okay.
You want a dedicated study space that's inviting and comfortable. So you're not fighting against discomfort while you're trying to focus.
Right.
So think about things like your seating, the temperature of the room, even the scent of the room.
Yeah, I can definitely agree that having a good chair makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
I remember I tried to study in like a really hard back chair one time,
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
I just got a backache and I couldn't focus.
It's so important. And then there's lighting. Natural light is ideal.
Right.
You know, it can boost your mood,
Right.
help regulate your sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah.
But if natural light isn't an option, make sure you have adequate artificial lighting that's, you know, bright enough to prevent eye strain,
Right.
but not so harsh that it's going to give you a headache.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then our University of Otago handbook also emphasizes the importance of keeping your study space clean and clutter-free.
Yeah, clutter is the worst.
Clutter can be a huge distraction
Yes.
because it bombards your brain with all this visual stimuli
Right.
and makes it so much harder to focus on the task at hand.
Oh my gosh, it's like all my thoughts just swirling around. Then I put them
Yeah.
on my desk.
Exactly. And it can actually increase stress and anxiety too.
Oh, for sure.
So take a few minutes before each study session just to tidy up,
Yeah.
put away any unnecessary items,
Mm.
and you'll be amazed at what a difference it makes.
Right. And speaking of visual aids, one of the sources mentions using color coding. Have you ever used color coding?
I used to be a little bit skeptical of color coding,
Oh, yeah.
but then I started using it when I was in med school for like my anatomy notes.
Wow.
And it was a game changer.
Oh, wow.
Suddenly, all those complex systems and structures started making sense.
That's amazing.
I know. So I'm a big believer in it now.
So how do you recommend using it?
Well, there are lots of different approaches. Some people like to use different colors for different categories of information.
Okay.
So, for example, they might use blue for definitions, green for examples, red for key takeaways.
Okay.
Other people use color to create visual hierarchies. So, like, the most important information is highlighted in a bolder color.
Right. Our School Finder source recommends using red for important words and definitions.
Okay.
And then blue for larger concepts.
Okay. So, again, it's about what works best for you.
Right.
You know, experiment with different colors.
Yeah.
See what resonates with your brain. Maybe you find that yellow helps you remember historical dates, or orange is perfect for highlighting mathematical formulas.
Interesting.
The key is just to create a system that makes sense to you,
Right.
and that enhances your ability to recall information.
Okay, so we've covered comfort, lighting, cleanliness, and color coding.
Right.
What else can we do?
Well, one thing that's super important that often gets overlooked is minimizing distractions.
Oh, yeah.
And this might involve things like, turning off your phone notifications.
Oh, yeah.
Putting your laptop on Do Not Disturb mode.
Right.
Or even using a website blocker.
Oh, I love website blockers.
To prevent yourself from, going down the rabbit hole of social media.
Oh, my God.
During your study sessions.
It's huge.
It's amazing how much those little notifications and pings can disrupt our focus.
Yeah, they do.
Even if we don't consciously realize it.
Right.
And speaking of minimizing distractions, it's also important to be mindful of your auditory environment. Some people need absolute silence to focus.
Right.
While others prefer to have some background noise.
I'm definitely a background noise person.
Me too.
Like if it's too silent, I feel like I'm going crazy.
I know it too.
So I usually like to put on some instrumental music.
Yeah.
Or nature sounds.
There are even apps and websites.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That are specifically designed for study-friendly background noise.
Yeah.
So check those out if you're interested.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier the University of Otago handbook.
Yeah.
Talks about the importance of breaking down information.
Right.
Into manageable chunks.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. One of the biggest obstacles to effective studying is just feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
By the sheer volume of information.
Oh, for sure.
That we need to learn.
Yes.
But remember, you don't have to tackle everything at once.
Right.
Breaking down large tasks.
Yeah.
Into smaller, more manageable steps can make the process feel so much less daunting.
Yeah. So instead of thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to study for this giant exam.
Yeah.
I should break it down.
Exactly.
Into specific topics.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not just about a whole subject or a whole exam.
Okay.
This principle applies to all aspects of studying.
Okay.
So if you're reading a really dense textbook chapter,
right.
Break it down into sections.
Right.
If you're writing a research paper, break it down into the different stages of the writing process.
Okay.
If you're prepping for a presentation, break it down into the different points that you want to make.
It's kind of like we were talking about with the Pomodoro technique.
Exactly.
It's like you're breaking down your study time.
Exactly. Breaking things down into these smaller chunks makes it so much more manageable.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And don't underestimate the power of regular breaks.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But stepping away from your studies for a few minutes can actually boost your focus and productivity in the long run.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's like when you're working out at the gym.
Right.
You need those rest periods.
Yeah, to let your muscles recover.
Exactly. Your brain is like a muscle, too.
Okay.
If you push it too hard for too long,
right,
it's going to get fatigued.
Yeah.
And less efficient. So give your brain a chance to rest and recharge, and you'll come back feeling refreshed.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so we've talked about optimizing our study environment.
Right.
Breaking down information.
Right.
Taking those all-important breaks.
Right.
Now let's delve into some specific note-taking strategies.
Okay.
Are you ready to unleash your inner note-taking ninja?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay, let's get those notes flowing.
Okay. So we've created these ideal study sanctuaries. We're breaking down these tasks, and we're ready to take some notes.
Yes.
What note-taking strategies should we be using?
Well, all of our sources offer some really great note-taking wisdom.
Okay.
But the University of Otago handbook, I think, really emphasizes the importance of active note-taking.
Okay.
So it's not just about mindlessly copying down everything you hear.
Right.
It's about engaging with the material.
Right.
And creating a meaningful record that you can use for future reference.
I have to admit, I struggle with passive note-taking.
Yeah.
I end up with pages and pages of notes.
Yeah.
And then I look back and I'm like, I don't even know what this means.
Exactly.
So how can we be more active in our note-taking?
Well, one technique that the Otago handbook highlights is called the three-pronged approach.
Okay.
And it's all about preparing for actively participating in and then revisiting lectures.
Okay, so it's kind of a holistic approach.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, so before the lecture, you're setting the stage.
Okay.
By reviewing your previous notes.
Okay.
Familiarizing yourself with the upcoming topic.
Okay.
Maybe jotting down any questions you have.
So you're kind of priming your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then during the lecture, you're fully present.
Okay.
You're actively listening.
Okay.
Identifying key points.
Okay.
And taking notes in a way that makes sense to you.
So you're not just like trying to write down every single word.
No.
You're listening for those key points.
Exactly. And then after the lecture, that's where the magic really happens.
Oh, okay.
You revisit your notes.
Okay.
You fill in any gaps.
Okay.
You summarize the main ideas.
Okay.
You make connections to other concepts.
So you're really kind of like synthesizing the information.
Exactly. And turning those notes into a study guide.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. And speaking of study guides, let's talk about the Cornell note-taking system.
Ah, yes, the Cornell notes.
Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it, but honestly, I'm not sure I really understand how it works.
Okay, well, it's a structured approach
Right.
that divides your page into specific sections
Okay.
for notes, cues, and summaries. So basically, you divide your page into 3 sections. You have a wide column on the right for your main notes,
Okay.
a narrower column on the left for cues. So this could be keywords, questions, or main points.
Okay.
And then a section at the bottom for a brief summary of the entire page.
So it's like having these built-in study prompts
Exactly.
right there in your notes.
And it makes it so much easier to review and recall information later.
Okay, I'm going to have to try that one.
I think you'll really like it. And then for all of our visual learners out there,
Yes.
our sources highlight the power of concept maps.
Oh, concept maps.
Have you ever used those?
I have, but not in a very long time.
Well, they're a fantastic way to represent information visually,
Okay.
showing the relationships between different ideas and concepts.
Okay.
So they're really helpful for understanding complex topics
Okay.
and seeing the big picture.
Right.
And they can be as simple or as elaborate as you like.
Okay.
You know, you can use different colors to create them.
Yeah, the School Finder source talks about using different colors
Exactly.
to make them even more visually appealing.
Right. And, you know, use symbols, images, even doodles to make them your own.
Okay.
The key is just to find a visual representation
Right.
that resonates with you.
Makes sense.
And that helps you understand the material.
Okay. So we've explored the 3-pronged approach. We've looked at the Cornell system.
Right.
We've talked about concept maps. I feel much better about my note-taking skills.
Good.
But what about those looming exams?
Oh.
How can we prepare for those?
Well, exam preparation can definitely feel daunting.
Yes.
But remember, you've been steadily building a foundation of knowledge throughout the semester.
Right.
Now it's just about refining that knowledge
Okay.
and making sure that you can access it under pressure.
I always feel like I understand it
Yeah,
until I get into that exam room,
I know.
and then my mind goes blank.
The pressure gets to us. But one thing that the Otago Handbook really emphasizes is the importance of moving beyond passive learning and engaging in what they call deep learning.
Deep learning, okay.
So it's not enough to simply memorize facts and figures.
Right.
You need to be able to understand the concepts,
Right.
explain them in your own words,
Right.
and apply them to different situations.
So it's about making connections.
Exactly.
Not just like spitting back information.
And to achieve that level of understanding, you need to utilize active learning strategies.
Okay.
So things like asking yourself questions,
Right.
seeking clarification when needed,
Right.
engaging in discussions about the material.
Okay, so what about practice exams?
Oh, practice exams are great.
Those can be really helpful.
They're one of the best ways to prepare for the real deal.
Okay.
You know, it familiarizes you with the format and the style of the questions.
Right.
It helps you identify any areas where you might be struggling. And it allows you to practice retrieving information under timed conditions.
Like a dress rehearsal.
Exactly.
Okay.
And just as important as practicing with past papers is creating a realistic revision timetable.
Okay.
So allocate sufficient time
Right.
for each subject and topic, taking into account exam weightings
Right.
and, you know, your own personal learning needs.
The Otago Handbook talks a lot about time management.
Time management is crucial,
Okay.
especially during exam season
Right.
when things can feel really overwhelming and stressful.
Yeah.
But having that plan can really help you stay on track
Right.
and make the most of your study time.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From time-tested techniques like the Pomodoro technique and the Feynman technique to structured note-taking systems
Right.
to active learning strategies.
Lots of tools.
What does all of this mean for you, the listener, who's ready to kind of level up your study game?
The key takeaway here is that there's no one right way to study. It's all about finding what works best for you.
Yeah, I love that.
So experiment with different techniques, adapt them to your own learning style.
Right.
And don't be afraid to think outside the box.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey. We've all been there.
Yeah.
And there are tons of resources available to support you.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep learning.
Yes. Happy studying, everyone.
Until next time.